And it's funny, it's interesting to me to observe that whenever there's a study that is being done, let's say smoking cigarette, if you filter the smoke of cigarette, dissolves that into water or saline, and expose stem cells to it, you have shut down stem cells' ability to migrate in a tissue and proliferate.
Hmm.
So alcohol will do the same thing. Stress will do the same thing. So it's almost like the moment we start to study things that we know are bad for health, they happen to have a negative impact on stem cells.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to ALLSMITH, where we forge stronger minds, bodies, and lives from the inside out. Today's guest, I'm excited to introduce. He's a biological pioneer who's helping us tap into the body's most underappreciated superpower, stem cells. That's right. We're not talking about just injections or lab coats or the traditional societal norm associated with stem cells. We're talking about nature. We're talking about self-renewal. And we're talking about the famous Christian Drapeau. Welcome to the show today, man. I'm really excited to unpack this conversation with you.
Same here, thank you.
Speaking of all of this, man, like when people hear stem cells, they think controversy. They think things that they don't conceptually or totally understand. If you were to give somebody like a 1-minute elevator pitch to help give them some contextual understanding of what stem cells are, what would you say to them to kind of create that tip of the iceberg knowledge for them to have some tools in their toolbox?
Let me give you two answers. The one that I have given for the past 20 years, which was more coming from my angle as a scientist, I would basically say every single cell of your body are called somatic cells. They have one specific function, like a cell of a muscle is to contract, a cell of your retina is to capture light or react to light. They do one thing, they will never multiply, and they will never transform into something else. So stem
Mm.
cells is the opposite of this. It's almost like a blank cell, and it is waiting for a signal to basically multiply and become cells of another tissue. So they are immortal in your body. You will have them for your entire life, and their role is to transform into other types of cells. They were historically known to become blood cells. Now we know that they become everything in your body. They're actually your repair system.
Mm.
But now what I've learned to say, because somewhere it's like it's anatomical, it's physiological. So I think what speaks more to people is basically refer to what they know, which is to say, for everybody, stem cells is a treatment. You go somewhere and then you get an injection of stem cells, and people think these are the only stem cells that really matter in their life. And it is. Stem cells are injections have their place, but it is such a misunderstanding of really the meaning of stem cells in people's lives. This is really just the tip of the iceberg. We need to understand stem cells are the repair system of your body. Just like you have an immune system, you have a repair system. And that repair system, when we understand it, it changes our understanding of health, wellness, aging, disease formation, longevity. And I think it's called to change the way that we practice medicine.
Yeah, totally, man. Stem cells have really become like buzzwords, right? It's been tossed around a little bit. As I previously mentioned offline, we had the greatest big wave surfer ever on the podcast, Shane Dorian, and he went down to Mexico to get stem cells throughout a lot of different portions of his body to heal based on some of the really eccentric falls that he experienced through trying to surf some of the biggest waves in the world in Portugal and up in Northern California at Mavericks and some of the biggest waves in Hawaii and Oahu and all the different places. But what do you think are the biggest myths or marketing lies that are out there today where people are trying to kind of deconstruct the magic of stem cells because they kind of have this contradictory contrast to some of the big pharma narratives?
I mean, let me rephrase it a little bit. I do not believe that they are lies. I think that they are market dynamics.
Mm.
A lot of people saying these things, that's what they were told, and they just repeat what they think. So let's say the misleading concepts that are out there.
Yeah,
Uh,
fair.
let me take them one at a time. The one that is the most obvious is that you go and you get a stem cell injection, for example, in South America, and now the umbilical cord stem cells have. That's the way pharma was able to, in a way, capture the whole stem cell momentum that was escaping them, in a way, is by providing you a little vial. It makes it like really practical, easy. So now it's pharma in a way, in a cell. But before that, until fairly recently, the source of stem cells was to take stem cells from your bone marrow, from your blood, from your fat tissue. So they're already there in your body. So what are they doing? Like, they're not better because you take them out and put them back in. So
Mm.
the big first misinformation out there is that your stem cells mean something if I inject them to you. And it's just to understand, no, this regenerative power is already in you, and you can tap into this regenerative power. I've heard so second big misunderstanding, that one is very close to a lie. It is, and it comes from, for example, in his book, Tony Robbins, and I've heard him on podcasts saying, past 40, your stem cells are down the cliff in terms of effectiveness. So, like, they're worthless. So you need to get an injection. And it is absolutely false. Your stem cells we have done a study that is ongoing. We just published the first preliminary data of that trial on chronic stable congestive heart failure. So we've got
Okay.
people between 65 and 75 years of age. They have chronic stable congestive heart failure. We just put them on our product. 6 months later, 10 out of 10 have regained normal heart function. They're
Oh,
all in
wow.
their 60s and above. So it's to take a true statement to say at 60 years old, your stem cells are not as effective as when you were 15. Absolutely true statement. To say, therefore, they're worthless, this is like me saying you're not as effective, you're not running as fast as when you were 15 today, therefore you're worthless. Absolutely untrue.
Yeah.
So your stem cells at any point in your life are effective. So that's probably another big of the misunderstanding. And again, I already mentioned it. Another big one out there is to think that the only way to tap into stem cell is to go and get an injection.
Yeah.
It's not. You need to go to Mexico. You need to go to other countries, because the idea was planted here in America that somewhere, like, it's unsafe, it's risky. It is not. It is not the reason why stem cells are regulated in the country. It's because they cure, and therefore they are the biggest threat to pharma. So lobbying of pharma has pushed regulation to try to stifle the development of something that is going to make pharma, if you push it to the extreme, would make pharma obsolete. That is the reason why regulations are put in this country. So these are some of the big misunderstandings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so happy you touched on that concept because it's one of those things that, so many people, especially during COVID, Christian, hey, trust the science. This is out there, silence is violence. Take the vaccine or you're part of the problem. And for some reason, my intuition, my heart centered response was, you know what? I'm simply going to press pause. I'm going to seek to understand. I'm going to wait to gather more information. And the ridicule we experienced as a brand, individually, the separation between certain relationships, once people became aware that I wanted to press pause before just jumping into that decision, it was simply interesting to me. I don't label it good or bad. I just label it interesting. And so my big element of curiosity there, Christian, is, when you look at big pharma and you want to relate some of these concepts just to kind of pattern recognition, following the patterns, right? Like we look back to COVID and this narrative was pushed by the media, the vaccine and all the different things associated with that. And now we're seeing some of the controversial evidence float to the surface around myocarditis, the lab leak in Wuhan. A lot of those seemingly controversial conspiracy theories are now becoming true. Apologies are not being made. pardons don't typically go to innocent people. And so we're seeing the challenges with Fauci, all these different things where maybe it's an electronic pen. Did Biden actually sign those pardons? I don't know. The timing of signing those pardons was really odd to me. The fact that it was within 10 to 15 minutes of his final time in office. Something seemingly didn't pass my smell test. So if I'm moving that forward into the controversies around stem cell research and the narrative around stem cells, it comes back to big pharma. Are they the lobbyists
Mhm.
behind the scenes that are monetizing and paying politicians to try to have political reform and get things steered down the direction that they want for their personal benefit and for monetization? I don't know, but it's a fair question. And so my question for you, Christian, is what does big pharma not want people to know about their own body's healing? Because Pfizer's been in business, they've made millions, if not trillions of dollars. But ironically, they've never had a cure. That word cure means that you don't have to go back and get more. And so inevitably a sick patient is a profitable patient.
I mean, these are all sort of it's conspiracy as long as you got data to show that it's a crime. So somewhere as we go into, well, let me answer your question. And you already provided part of the answer to the question. We
Mm-hmm.
just need to understand that if you're a CEO of a big pharma company and your aim, your job is to deliver bottom line and profit, and the best future for your business, it's easy to understand that if you've got a treatment, like let's take insulin, let's take diabetes. So I sell you insulin every month for the rest of your lives, or I have a treatment that can regenerate your pancreas and it's a one-time treatment. I mean, you get so much more money out of the entire life of a person. So I think that if you just look at the economics of this in a very simple way, it's obvious that cure is not the business of pharma.
Mm-hmm.
Putting aside, I would say, like nefarious thought to say, that they don't care about the health of people. I mean, we can get in there, but let's keep it in just market dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
The push is not in curing. And I think that this is where stem cells have brought the biggest clash with that business model, because stem cells cure. Stem cells will repair organs, will repair tissue. The scientific literature is solid beyond question. Stem cells can cure, they can repair. So that clash has led to strong lobbying, starting early on, like in 2005, between, as early as 2005, lobbying was such that pharma has developed entire organization aimed at kind of clouding the information on the marketplace. People remember, you go back in the early 2000s, and for most people, stem cells was baby parts. It's you kill babies to get stem cells. How can this idea be in the general population about something that has never ever been that? It was fed through various channels, and it's to create an obstacle to stem cell development so that it would give time for pharma to find a way to capitalize, I think, this whole movement. So fast forward to today, we're in the consequence of all these early actions, where we're in a place where there's still tons of regulations preventing the full development of stem cells in the US. In Europe is the same. So you need to go into so-called third world countries, or countries that are much more free in the application of medicine, to be able to get those kinds of treatment. And it's because pharma does not have the same hold, if you want, in these countries. If you put all of that aside, the US should be the leading country in the development of stem cell treatments. They are not risky, they are effective. Stem cells are working. So there's an interference there to lead to what we have here in the US, no question.
You seem to be a really curious guy, a really smart guy, somebody that pays attention to the narratives that are floating to the surface, not just in the US, but in the broad and inclusive totality of the world. What led to your curiosity and investigation into stem cells? Was it something that was, like you said, a little bit nefarious and maybe a little bit controversial? Like, hey, I'm seeing medicine go this way and they're not actually fixing problems and going to the root cause? Or what led to this element of curiosity based on your historical background personally?
Well, my story is much simpler than that. Like everything that I've learned about, the backstory and the background of all this dynamics of the development of stem cell research, I learned it sort of the hard way as I moved forward with my own research. But for me, it started really, I was hired in 1995 to study a product that was a plant that was on the market at the time, blue-green algae from Klamath Lake. There was a
Mm,
main company selling this product. DSHEA had just been passed, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, and any company making any sort of claim on their product needed to have data behind their claims. I was hired to study how this aquatic botanical was working in the body, mechanisms of action, active compound, that kind of stuff. So we very, very quickly identified the mechanisms of action on the effect that was reported on inflammation, on the immune system, and on mental clarity, mood elevation. Like people experience this sense of well-being. So we documented that very quickly. But as I'm doing this work, I came across people reversing multiple sclerosis. I mean, somebody in a wheelchair with rectal touch every day to get a bowel movement, and within about 10 months, this person was having a normal life.
that's
People on
incredible, by the way. That's so cool.
but this is one case. So I have another case. It was like I received, for example, a letter one day from the chief of a native tribe in Washington. I forgot the name of the tribe. And he's describing, he says, I'm 65 years old. I've been diabetic for the past 40 years, insulin dependent diabetic. I had 3 bypass surgery. I have heart problems. So I bought my plot at the cemetery. I said goodbye to my people. And then somebody gave me this product, and I'm just writing to you right now. My last exam at the doctor told me my heart is fine. My heart is fine. I'm not using insulin anymore. So this is like a rebirth for me. So I'm dedicating my time to my people. So I'm just saying thank you. I don't have a medical record, but if somebody is writing this, so all that kind of stories I got from, I don't know, maybe like a total of 100 cases: emphysema, Parkinson, Alzheimer's, liver failure, kidney failure. But from a scientific standpoint, the question was, if these are all true, what is this plant doing, helping someone's pancreas, someone else's liver, someone else's brain, lung, heart, like all kinds of different aspects of human health? I had no explanation for it. We did a number of studies over the next, let's say, 4 or 5 years, and we didn't find anything. We had good data, but nothing that was really the aha discovery. Until early 2001, I came across a study in the field of stem cell research. It was the infancy of stem cell research at the time. And like anybody who studied medicine, we know that stem cells were known to be precursors to blood cells. They make red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, and that's it. That study was talking about stem cells going to the brain and becoming brain cells. I thought it was fascinating. My background is brain research. We know the brain does not repair. At least that was the dogma. So to see a stem cell going to the brain and becoming a brain cell, I thought it was fascinating. So I dug into the scientific literature, and in 2001, early 2001, I could find one other paper documenting the same phenomenon for the liver and another one for the heart. So I just thought, if stem cells can become heart, liver, and brain, what would be the mechanism that would allow stem cells to become those 3 and not the rest? It makes no sense. So that means it's just a matter of time. Scientists will document that they can become everything else. So let's assume they can become everything in the body. They have to be the repair system of the body. So we published an article in a journal, Medical Hypotheses, suggesting that stem cells are the repair system of the body. And in the back of my mind, for the first time, I had a plausible, though far-fetched, but plausible explanation. Just like you have plants stimulating the immune system, what if this blue-green algae was stimulating the repair system? You put more stem cells in circulation, they go in the pancreas of the diabetic, the heart of the heart patient, the brain of the Parkinson patient, and so on. So we acquired a flow cytometer, which was fairly rare at the time. So this is more than 20 years ago. So 20 years, yeah. So we bought a flow cytometer that counts stem cells, and then we started ourselves. We took a blood sample, counted the number of stem cells, took this blue-green algae, took another blood sample an hour or 2 hours later, because the residence time of stem cells in the bloodstream is just a few hours. And then we discovered the whole phenomenon. That blue green algae was indeed putting more stem cells in circulation. That is my entrance in the whole world of stem cell research. And that's all that I have done since January 2001. So that's how I got involved in stem cell research.
That's so cool. Originally being a curious herbalist, you
That's
got
right.
positioned at the right place at the right time. Since having some of these case studies and publishing some of this hypothesis research, have you experienced any backlash from big pharma? Have they come after you because you're seemingly providing a cure, which is going to have a potentially a negative impact on their sales or their ability to, market things like diabetes and, other forms or even, surgeries and whatnot?
I have not, but I have played it extremely safe for a number of reasons. Like what I just shared with you earlier on, I have not talked about this ever until fairly recently when I'm kind of allowing myself to go into this a little bit. I
Mhm.
have not for a number of reasons. It's just not the fear of doing it, but it's also I need to navigate regulations about dietary supplement and also honesty and integrity with the data that we have.
Mhm.
So I'm not doing anything to any disease. All I'm doing, I'm supporting the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. The body does it. The problem that you have in your 60s, you did not have them when you were 20 years old because you had plenty of stem cells at that time. So somewhere, all I'm doing is I'm giving back the body its own ability to repair. So I am not making any claim about the fact that we can make any difference in a disease, so that we're not really competing in the messaging with pharma. So, and we cannot go there. The regulations in the country, in America, about dietary supplement, we cannot talk about disease. So we have this study about congestive heart failure. We have another study on Parkinson when we show really good results. But at the end, the message is strictly to show the extent of your body's ability to repair with conditions that normally medicine thinks the body cannot repair itself. And all we're showing that is that the body can, if you just give the body's, you just boost the body's ability to repair by making it release more of its own stem cells. So by maintaining that messaging, we have never really, and we're not big enough also, and we're touching really, I would say, a fringe part of the population, the one who have free thinking, who have independent thinking, if you want, that have decided to take their own health in their own hands, and they're looking at what else is available out there. This is really the only. I mean, it's a tiny fraction of the population, but with 300 million Americans, it's a big. It's big enough. But my point is that we have not yet really penetrated what I would say mainstream medical discourse. And that's
Yeah.
probably why we're still really like not really known out there.
hmm I think you're not really known yet. I think it's
Yeah.
the famous line, "The power of yet." I think with some of the disruption and the pushback from RFK and his conversations that he's having on Rogan and the challenges with the vaccine, which we talked briefly about offline, and understanding that like something's off here. Something's off
Mhm.
as far as the profitability and just inevitably looking at the monetary components of all of these big pharma companies and seeing that we're not providing cures. We're keeping people slaves to the system. They're inevitably having to be slaves to health insurance. The health insurance companies are having issues now. And we look at Brigham Bueller and his company, Ways to Well, and what he's doing in Austin and the conversation that he's now having with Congress. I know you've spoken extensively with Dave Asprey and some of the
Mhm.
this biohacking community that's allowing some of these really cool things to float to the surface. And like you said, they're just conversations. How do we enhance stem cells? How do we create alternative sources of healing, longevity, enhancing the quality of people's lives, and do it in such a manner where we're not creating this incredibly disruptive fire that's going to be put out by the fire extinguisher being big pharma? And so as you're kind of navigating, having these bigger conversations with biohackers like Dave Asprey that are probably pushing against the grain a little bit like I am, has that kind of enhanced a little bit of confidence in you that, like, you know what, we're kind of on the right track here. Like maybe we just need to go deeper. Maybe we need to do more studies, but that requires more funding. That requires a little more monetary component to kind of allow this small little fire that you've made to kind of grow into this bonfire that I think will diffuse more information to the general public.
The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level.
I mean, if I have one strength and one quality, if I could call it that, is that I'm stubborn, and how could I say, let me put it this way: if I see someone flying, I will say, okay, we can all fly. So if we do a study on 20 men that don't fly, I'm not going to conclude, therefore we cannot fly. I saw one man flying, so I know we can fly. The moment I observe something in the scientific literature, even if the entire medical establishment says it's not true, I saw what I saw, and I'm just going to continue in that direction.
It's
So
possible.
in that way, I have a free thinking, and it's probably the only reason why I've been pushing on what I'm pushing now for so long. So if your question is like, as biohacking, Dave Asprey, and all this field gave me more confidence or more courage, I would say no. Like from the day that I saw that stem cells could become everything in the body, and I had the first blue-green algae extract that we tried in people, and I saw what it was doing in people. I remember that day in the office when this thought really came on me, and I just thought, my God, we're putting an end to disease. And from that day on, my trust in all of this has never faltered like 1 nanometer. Like I know that what we're doing here can literally change the world. However, the platform that Dave has developed, the momentum here of the biohacking and a lot of other people that have brought attention on other things about human health that are outside of what mainstream medicine says is true. All of this momentum has amplified what I have done. So I'm extremely thankful for the work that all these people have done. I've partnered with a number of them. It's really amplifying the message, and there's no doubt in my mind that the ability to tap into the regenerative potential of our own stem cells in our body can change, and if it happens, will change everything in terms of health, wellness, understanding aging, disease formation, longevity. It is central to all these questions, and not a little bit. It can change everything. It's a big discussion.
Yeah. I just love the passion that I hear in your voice, and I can't help but think back to like being on the playground where everybody says, you're voting on, what game to play or the rules and regulations on a certain outcome, and everybody loves to yell majority rules. And sometimes within the realm of scientific research, like you said, there might be 20 instances where the gentleman didn't fly, but that 21st instance, all it takes is one time to unlock that childlike ideology of like, oh, this is possible. Let's lean into that a little bit. If it's possible once, it's probably repeatable. And I think that's an interesting conversation to have, Christian, because this line has floated to the surface a lot in the last 5 to 8 years, which is trust the science. But what's the goal of the science? Who's funding the science? Is it a double blind placebo?
Uh-huh.
Like, I mean, I was a huge proponent of like Men's Health and Men's Journal growing up. And I think there's a lot of good to steer people in the right direction towards movement and awareness and making better health choices. However, time and time again, it's like, oh, according to this research study or according to this doctor, well, you don't know who's in the pocket of that doctor. You don't know who's in charge of funding that research study. So what does that reputability really mean to me? But as a young person, I see the dude that's super jacked, or I see the person performing at the highest level. And all of a sudden, the marketing component of advertising and the pictures and unlocking things that we want as humans, which is a leaner physique, better health biomarkers, higher sex drive, increased capacity, more peace, make more money, like all these things that seemingly paint the picture of incentive. Hey, if I do these things, I'm going to get that thing. And then it becomes this subtle manipulation to the general public. Hey, if I do that according to that expert who's marketed himself real well, I'm going to get that thing. And so what I'm curious about here is kind of unpacking, creating some knowledge for people. When we hear the phrasing, trust the science, the research shows this. What discrepancies lie in the in-between of kind of that phrase? And what education can you give people to better understand that, who maybe don't have a ton of time to dig through the
Mhm.
onslaught of research articles that you typically go through?
It's a tough question because my answer at the end, which is the best that I can provide, is not really helpful in the context of what you described. I think that you need to find voices out there that you trust and then follow the direction that they're pointing. But the question now is like, how do you find people that you can trust? Because at the end, you're totally right. The science can be easily manipulated. The best example of this is what happened with COVID. I mean, talk about such a force in the world telling you how much this vaccine is working. And yet, if you go and read really the science of it, from day one, it never worked. The science is showing it never worked. And yet, the language of what is being told to you by experts is that it works. So, if you're not capable of going and reading the science, you have to rely on voices that you trust, because at the end, that's the only thing that people have. So, and in an age with so much media power, I think it's there. You start, if you can read the science, read it, but find voices that you trust. And to me, it's at the end of the day, it's like the strongest strategy. I was talking about before, you see a man fly, and to me, men flies. What I meant by this is that, for example, a little snippet of a part of my life. So in the mid, let's say 2007, something like this, I was in a group of doctors who heard about my work on stem cells, and one of them come and says, but this whole thing, like, this is bull crap. Like for example, stem cells cannot become brain cells. And I said, of course they can. And he says, no, they can't. And I said, well, I'm writing a book on this right now, and I have all the literature in my room. If you want, I can go and get that literature and show it to you. And he says, don't bother. Let me tell you something, because of course nobody is telling you. You're just an idiot. And it's just an interesting snapshot. I can provide to you dozens of studies back then, dozens of studies showing how stem cells can go and become brain cells. But if it goes against the dogma, the entire medical profession is going to crush it. So as you choose your scientists, the thinkers, the voice that you're going to trust, there's also that, like, how much do they follow the main voice of medicine, or how much are they the one who go and dig in the science themselves, and they come out and they give you their opinion? So at the end of the day, I would say the place to start is find people who can go and dig in the science themselves, see the red flags, and then chew it up and give you like what seems to be like the fair view, the fair opinion, the good conclusion of all that science.
Congratulations for your courage, man. I mean, to be the black sheep in the world of medicine is difficult. And I think as natural human beings, completely removing traditional science and just looking at natural human behavior, we are naturally like tribal animals.
Totally.
right? And like when you have that one person in the tribe that's like, hey, I'm actually a nonconformist. I don't agree to this ideology because the expectations are a little bit off. The communication strategy seemingly feels forceful. The phrasing of mandate, you have to do this thing or else, is an interesting selling point to me. And I think if you were to just zoom out and you look at animal culture and you see how much dogs want to stay together, you see how many, you go to the zoo and you see animals kind of sticking together, you see how birds kind of flock together. Being that black sheep and kind of going off to the side, being like, actually, I don't align with that. I'm going to try this way. It's very difficult, and it's very traumatizing. It elicits probably different elements of pain. But if you're able to overcome that original friction and kind of create a little bit more open-mindedness and curiosity, all of a sudden you start by yourself, and then people start to follow a little bit because they themselves are like, whoa, I'm blindly following based on comfort and convenience, not based on what aligns with my value system. And I think that's very interesting ideation, because you look back to the Industrial Revolution, it was like factory workers, and a lot of our education has been based on that. Like, hey, Christian, if you do this and you memorize these steps, you're going to get this thing. But it was almost saying that memorization was education. If you remember all these facts and you execute on the exam, you're going to get this score, and then I'm going to label you or validate you as a human. You're this smart, you're going to get this grade, you're going to get into this school, and then you're going to get that job. And if you push back against that a little bit, it's not teaching people how to critically think. It's not teaching people how to question. And what I love about what podcasting has done is, like, I could be over here and you could be over there, and we can have this fun, open-minded dialogue. And I could totally disagree with you. But if you make points that kind of help create buy-in on my side, and I actually critically think and realize, oh, I don't actually have a reason for that. I just trusted said person that I thought was an expert. But then I realized so-and-so was in their pocket to manipulate the data they were throwing my way. I'm actually going to open my ears and my mind and my heart a little bit, be like, oh, wow, you make a great point. Let me move a little bit closer to your side of the street. And so what I'm trying to unlock for you to share with our audience is, how do we create a little bit more of an open-minded culture where people aren't on this political left or this political right, or trust the science, or I'm a vaxxer versus a non-vaxxer or an anti-vaxxer? It's like, you and I both know the answer is somewhere in the messy middle. And if we're genuinely trying to do good in the world, we should be open to the land of uncomfortable conversations and seeking to understand both sides of the street, rather than saying I'm right and you're wrong.
It's another tough question. You have a lot of tough questions, because there are questions about really their societal question, and even today we're in an age where, with podcast, with many, it's easy to be an expert today. It was not before. So it's almost like there's a big plus to it, but also a big negative. Let's rewind. Let's say 20 years ago, you would only hear from experts. An expert is somebody that has been educated in the field, has the degrees in that field. They are vetted. To write a book, an editor must vet you before you can have access to publishing. Before you go on a news channel, you're vetted before you go on a news channel. So there's a selection that is both positive, because you get people who know what they're talking about, and negative also, because if you get somebody who really knows what he's talking about, but he's outside of the accepted politically correct discourse, then you never hear from that person. And that's, I think, what today's communication and media has brought, like a diversity of opinion, but it reduced the vetting process. So we're in this place where I think that what makes difficult what you just asked, how do you find yourself in this ocean of information? It's really to find voice that you can trust, because there are a lot of opinions out there. For me, it's get down to the data. For me, that's what it is. Because if I have, for me, like I told you before, I have one strength, and it's probably to be stubborn, is that if I hear something and it does not make sense in what I believe, then I will basically suspend judgment. I won't do anything with it. I'm not going to deny it, but I'll recognize that I just don't have enough information to have an opinion about it. And I'll go and I'll dig in the data just to see what it is. But I am Teflon in terms of being penetrated by views that don't make sense to me. I just don't accept them. So to me, it's my way to navigate into this ocean of information. It's to go back, dig in the data, and see for yourself what is true, what is real. But it's complicated in this era. It's very complicated because there's tons of opinions that at times are not educated opinions, and they can still make a lot of sense. They seem logic at the surface. It's not simple.
No, it's really not. And like you said, there's this reservoir of information. We don't struggle with information right now between the internet, Chat GBT, Grok, Reddit, all the different forms of information and people's opinions, and the comment section of social media and things like that. Like there's so much information where it's almost information overload. But I've heard you say a few times, like, find people that you trust, trying your best to look at the data. But I push back against that a little bit, because how do you know who to trust? Right. And it's like, I myself am so freaking curious that it's like, hey, I'm observing somebody on the day to day, because I feel like it's hard to fake it every single day. You can fake it on occasion. But if I'm seeing somebody that's like, hey, you have great habits, you're pretty consistent with, let's just use Dave Asprey as an example. He's talked time and time again about bulletproof. He's talked about ketogenic diets. He's talked about fasting. And then I see the correlation between him and like Ben Greenfield. I'm seeing things pop up to the surface around, hey, if somebody is diagnosed with cancer typically functions on a high sugar diet, but it can't function from ketones. I'm like, whoa, there's a correlation there. Now, Dave Asprey, he gets more reputability from me because the stuff he's talking about is also talked about by these other thought leaders. And so I'm finding like a certain thing, and I'm finding these correlational things. And then I talk, to the founder of Wizard Sciences, and he's talking about numerous case studies that he's experienced from people fasting, being on a ketogenic diet, integrating carbon-60 serum, and later deuterium depleted water, and hundreds of case studies seeing cancer polyps disappear from people on that protocol. And I'm like, oh, there's a common thread here that I can kind of pull back, and now it's creating trust and rapport. But I'm the curious podcaster that wants to really know and create, get rid of the fog in the lenses for people to have clarity, so that way they can be like, hey, when I listen to ALLSMITH, we're going to get real information, not just marketing bullshit that everybody else is throwing into the world to try to just monetize. And so would you say that's kind of the common thing, is like try to see correlations across numerous thought leaders and people that are seemingly gaining rapport within the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, remember when I gave that answer to find people that you trust, I started by saying it's not going to be a good answer, because now you've just kicked the problem, you kicked the can down the road. Now, how do you find somebody that you trust? And it's like what you just said. It's by hearing from various people, see how the information can be cross-verified, dig yourself a little bit into some of it, see if what you find echoes what some of these people have said. It's how you slowly develop a number of individuals that you can trust. But it's not simple. And even if the people that you trust, sometime as they dig deeper, they may change their mind. So there's also, we need to also realize it's not, even these people are not like fail safe. Sometimes you evolve in your own thought. I mean, we're really getting back into, I think, trusting the experts that you listen to, and dig a little bit yourself to verify some of what you hear. Is how do you find your place into all this ocean of information and misinformation?
Yeah. No,
It's not simple.
I admire this context. We've had Dr. Andy Galpin on a few times, and he always is so funny because his answer to almost every question is, in quotes, "It depends." And it really does.
It
And
does.
I think that's such an honest answer, and I really appreciate it, even though it's probably a little bit annoying to the consumer because they're like, dude, just give me the answer. I want to know what to do. And it just shows that like people are really good at following instructions,
Hmm.
but sometimes they're not good at kind of tinkering in the lab and finding out for themselves. But where I want to touch next, Christian, is everything that's measured doesn't always count, and everything that
Hmm.
counts isn't always measured.
Hmm.
And so when we're looking at data, or when you specifically are looking at data, how do you create rapport and buy-in for yourself to trust certain numerical values? I know you had mentioned like, hey, it starts with 1, and then I start to kind of push on that a little bit to explore how some of these things are possible, or how stem cells are touching into the brain a little bit. What are your thoughts on numerical data? And I'll just use, since I'm a basketball guy, like Draymond Green plays for the Golden State Warriors. His statistics are not the best, but that dude is the straw that stirs the drink back in the day for both Steph Curry and Klay Thompson to get all those open shots, setting screens, being the guy that really gets after it defensively and kind of does the blood, sweat, and tears behind the scenes, the locker room guy, the loud vocal guy.
Hmm.
And then as a byproduct, even though his statistics aren't that good, it unlocks potential in his teammates, which is super cool. But that's a prime example of like numbers aren't always everything,
Hmm.
but they say something.
I have a complex relationship with numbers. Let me start with this. What would you think? It's not a tricky question. What would you think is like the greatest force in humanity? The greatest force that is moving people, in the world? I would say love or
I
hatred.
was literally going to say that. It's tattooed on me right here. I
There
think
you go.
everybody's craving
Love.
love.
Now, the greatest force in humanity cannot be quantified. So just right from the get-go, thinking that everything that matters is quantified is absolutely untrue. So as a scientist, my approach to it has always been a scientist, and I quit my PhD to go and live in a monastery just because at some point, anyway, we can get into that later. But I've gone into both sides, where to me, what really matters is not actually quantifiable. So I use numbers to confirm what is my gut feeling as I dive into the literature and I read, and as I dig in literature, you get a sense of what is there. And then after that, I verify with the numbers. And if you have not asked that question specifically, but a similar question that I oftentimes get asked is like, okay, the product that I developed that has an effect on stem cells, what does it do for different markers of longevity, like telomerase, telomere length, for example? And it's funny because I don't care about those numbers for a number of reasons, because numbers are great, but they depend, just like Dr. Gapin says, it depends. Take, for example, DNA methylation, probably one of the biggest marker for longevity today. Well, you can measure DNA methylation in a person the day before and the day after a surgery, and that person has aged 10 years overnight. So is it age? Like, has the person really aged 10 years overnight? No, it's just a marker that has shown trauma, and it has changed overnight. Like if something can change overnight, how confident are you that it's going to be predictive of what is happening in 50 years from now? It's absolute nonsense. So to think that today my DNA methylation is telling me that I'm 10 years younger, my biological age is 10 years younger, therefore I'm going to live 10 years older, toward the end of my life, is like completely detached from reality. So I'm thinking, so you're asking me to evaluate the impact of releasing our own stem cells on markers of longevity, while I can show you cases of quadriplegics that have gained mobility. We have a study on congestive heart failure where all patients so far in the study have normal heart condition after 6 months. Have their marker changed for longevity? Who cares? they have now normal heart function. So in this whole context, I don't put a lot of weight on numbers when it comes to the traditional way of quantifying health in today's biohacking world. But that's just me. It's my approach, and it comes from my experience of just seeing that the forces that are driving health are not oftentimes easily quantifiable, and the things that we do quantify are not necessarily representative. They're good guides, let's put it that way. That's my complex relationship with these numbers.
I love that answer. I think it's beautiful that you take the numbers as a considerable variable, but it's not everything. And you also understand that love, bedside manner, consistency, environment, creating buy-in, creating an optimistic perspective. I mean, when my father was passing away from brain cancer, we came to realize that people need three things: something to do, someone or something to love, and something to look forward to. And
Mm-hmm.
like when you have something to look forward to, I mean, look at the day-to-day people. They're always looking forward to the weekend, right? Or they're looking forward to, that next event or that vacation. And having something to look forward to creates an eternal optimism of buy-in of, hey, if I just keep doing the thing, I'm going to get to that outcome. And I think that's also a variable to take into consideration for sure. And I really appreciate from a scientific perspective just the sheer honesty there of like the numbers matter. Not saying they don't matter, but they're not everything. I think
You
that's really
know,
cool.
in what we're talking about here, scientists have studied centenarians, super centenarians, with the idea in terms of data and number to see what correlation do we find, like in terms of DNA expression, intestinal flora, what many markers and things have been looked at to see what is common to all centenarians. And at the end of the day, there's only one thing that is common to all centenarians. They know how to be happy. They're happy. You can't quantify that.
Mm-hmm.
Not only you can quantify that, but from a scientific standpoint, not a spiritual standpoint, from a scientific standpoint, there's no technique to be happy. There's nothing that you can do to be happy. It needs to be like an inner quest where you find that happiness comes only from within you, which is an whole other story, but it's not science. It's not a strategy. Well, it can be a strategy. It's not a technique, a method. So the only parameter that is common to all centenarians is not quantifiable and is not scientific.
Yeah,
It's
that's really,
sobering.
yeah, it really is. That's a good way to describe it. And I mean, I follow a bunch of people that are really successful in business and tech. And I love learning from people that are doing really cool things in the world. And another common thread or correlation that I've been seeing recently is some of these tech experts have created incredible technology, incredible businesses, and then they have these monumental exit strategies where they get paid billions of dollars. And the societal perception is like, hey, more money, more peace. But it's like it doesn't always lead to that, because having problems to solve is an opportunity to contribute, is an opportunity to flex that inner song or the inner dialogue and shine our light on the world. It's the ability to pursue fulfillment. It's the ability to consistently stay on the hunt for who we've not yet become and have a trickle down effect of fulfillment and purpose. And I think sometimes we're chasing monetization thinking that it's going to be the answer. And then all of a sudden, in the case of some of these tech geniuses, they're getting that monetization and they're sad, they're broken, they're depressed, they don't know what to do next. And then as a byproduct, I'm sure if you were to do a blood panel on them, you'd see a decrease in stem cells. You'd see a decrease, in so many health biomarkers as a byproduct of not being enrolled in the process, or as Elon would say, being useful in the world.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you really look at the life of just about any of those, let's say, super wealthy individual, um, and if you put the things aside, you probably would not have the life. You don't want to have the life of any one of them. I mean,
Mm.
like you said, it's their life is not fun at all. And I think chasing money or chasing anything in life, we're coming back a little bit to what we're talking about in terms of happiness. I mean, and we've all gone through it. You know, you get married, you have kids, you get a car, you get a house, you get a second house, you get a boat, you get a vacation. I mean, you just go on, and each one of them is accomplished with one specific aim, unconscious for the most part, but it's happiness. I'll be
Mm-hmm.
happy when I have this thing. I'll be happy when I achieve this thing. And we constantly chase these things. And there's a point, I mean, wisdom, I guess, there's a point where you realize none of them ever brings you happiness. And if it does, it's very temporary. And at the end, it really comes from within. So making money is important because it's how the world works. It's the energy of the world. Once you've made it, what you do with it tells a lot about who you are. But honestly, if detached from you have to be detached from the meaning of money. I think if you want to stay healthy in your mind and really be happy, not a lot of people wealthy are indeed happy at the same time. Not a lot.
Yeah. As we're approaching episode 300, you know, I was told this advice way early on in the podcast journey. People would say, hey, be careful getting to know your heroes. And that's kind of a famous cliche line, but I was like, you know, I'm curious. I want to go on this listening tour to connect with people and authentically share stories. But it's interesting because I look at a lot of high performers now, not with so much envy, but with more pity,
Mm-hmm.
because they do get into the rat race and they get stuck in this game. And then all of a sudden you take on money, you've got shareholders. And like you said, it's a never ending
Mm-hmm.
stair stepping pursuit that doesn't have a lot of happiness or peace. And I really appreciate your intrinsic connection to some of these things that are maybe in relation to faith or spirit. And I'm curious because you had mentioned, you know, taking a little bit of a tangent into the world of a monastery and kind of quitting your PhD. What was that experience like? And was there a particular moment that had you just kind of press halt or press stop on this path and pursue a different path?
I mean, you just have to go back into the mind of the 20-year-old, because today I could look back and just think, I mean, I would not change any of it, but you'd think like maybe it was not a wise decision. But it connects very well with what I shared before, which is if I look at something and I think something, even if the entire world tells me otherwise, I'm not going necessarily to go and battle with the world, but it's not going to change my mind.
Mm.
So I'm a student in my PhD, and one of the class was a number of like 4 professors at McGill talking about giving a lecture, and then I had to write an essay on the topic of that lecture. And one of them was Ron Melzack, who had just published at the time. So I guess we're probably like in 87, 88, something like this, had just published his new theory of pain. And that was one of the attempt was to explain phantom pain with people who got like a limb amputation and they have phantom pain, and so they have pain in their legs, but they have no legs. So how is that pain generated? And he wrote this nice theory, but that theory just did not fit with some key data that was present in the scientific literature. And I kind of wrote a criticism to his old theory, basically saying that, you know, if you present a theory that does not include existing data, I was a believer in this concept that Einstein expressed. A good theory is a theory that does not eliminate one iota of data. Otherwise, it doesn't match reality. It needs to be inclusive of everything. So if you needed to exclude pieces of data, then it's not a theory. So let's just say we don't know. So, and I propose some alternative to explain these phenomena in pain. And in parallel to this, you know, my field was neurophysiology. So I was like recording neurons and neuronal activity in the research for both epilepsy and memory. And at the same time, I had started to dig like my big pursuit in this area from a young age as a teen. I was just fascinated by the power of the mind. So I did a lot of things in accelerated learning, how you can learn fast, self-hypnosis, those kind of things. So as I pursue my interest in that field, I also started to study reincarnation from a scientific standpoint, reincarnation is extremely solid. Like it's a reality of the human experience. So two conflicts came to me as a student. Number one, I made that criticism of that theory, and as I pushed as a student, I was curious. As I pushed, the dean at some point told me, withdraw this paper that I had published and wait to have your PhD before you have an opinion. For the 20-year-old for whom truth is truth, you don't have to have a degree to express truth. So to say, wait to have a degree before you express truth, that phrase invalidated in me the value of the degree. Now it was meaningless to have that degree. If it meant the degree is more important than truth, it killed academia in my mind. And alongside to this, I'm doing study in memory, knowing that if you remember past lives, but your brain has been eaten by the worms and it's gone, that means memory is not in the brain. So juggling with those two conflict with what academia was presenting to me, academia lost all its interest, but the interest in understanding the mind deeper was still there. So I quit the PhD and I went to spend some time in a monastery. That's really the storyline behind me doing that. Then I came back and I was hired by this company doing the story with the blue-green algae. Not having a PhD, I was extremely limited into the jobs that I could have. So this company gave me an opening, and there you go. Through that job, I discovered a whole new aspect of human life, which is the body as a repair system. So it's hard for me when I look at it from a distance to see that the young man who quit his PhD, whatever made him quit that PhD is the exact same quality, if I could say, that allowed him to discover this effect on stem cells. Just the stubborn path of following what he sees and what makes sense.
Yeah. That's some powerful shit, man. Do you have to have a degree to express truth? And I
It's
think that
amazing.
it's so interesting to explore for sure when just taking a look at the higher levels of the education system. Like, is it education or is it brainwashing for some sort of credibility that aligns with the bigger narrative?
I mean, I don't want to diminish education, but if I were today, my best way to express it is that as you've gone through education, if you've accumulated a certain background, how much have you developed the ability of, let's say, I would say free thinking, independent thinking? To me, that should be the outcome of education. And it's needed. It's totally. So I do not, my experience, I don't want this to say that it devalues education. But yeah, I think education is to a large extent, it's brainwashing. Even in today's pace of scientific discovery, it's pretty much a fair statement to say everything that you were told as true when you graduate, give it at that time, it is probably untrue because the gap between research academia is such that by the time you graduate, probably a lot of that is actually, if you dig deep, untrue in the way that it was taught to you. It's fascinating,
It is.
but
It
it's
is really.
essential because it creates the background upon which you can build the rest. So I don't want to devalue education, but you're right. It's more akin to brainwash to a certain extent, and you need to leave and immediately be free almost from what you have learned, and it's the muscle that you've developed.
Mhm. And I think we have that when we're young, right? Like you think about kids
Totally.
playing sandbox. You think about like a collection of kids that maybe they have a ball or maybe they have some sort of field of play, and you watch the free thinking and the imagination kind of combine forces and new games get developed, new ways of thinking, new ways of keeping score. All these things kind of get unraveled, and it's almost like children are the geniuses of our world. And then as a byproduct, like you said, there's a subtle brainwashing. I'm not saying it's bad. It's like you have to play in that arena because for some people it's just you're a sponge, you absorb, and then all of a sudden you spit out by squeezing the sponge. But then for other people, it's like if you want to kind of test the level of geniusness, you can see how good your questions are. See how deep you want to explore. You can see how much free thinking, or there's probably levels to the free thinking game, right? And I think that's a really cool way to describe it. And it helps me understand too, like, I think it was totally necessary for you to step away and go to the monastery, because true learning comes from spending time with self. And spending
Totally.
time with self, especially in this day and age, it's terrifying. In a world of distraction, of constant social media overload, to music, to sounds, almost everybody has their head down looking on a phone, or they've got earbuds or headphones in. People aren't listening to the birds. They're not
Hmm.
observing cloud structure and feeling grounded as much as they once were. But we all know that there's an energetic cord, and Dave Asprey and some of these very primal thinkers talk about that a lot, of just like, you want to get closer to yourself, you want to unlock reservoirs of potential and knowledge, go into the wilderness for a week, turn off all devices and go spend some time there. And you're going to come back with a level of knowledge, understanding, free thinking, and curiosity that maybe got calloused or glossed over for much of adulthood. And so what I want you to kind of explore, kind of paint the picture for us, how do other people develop this muscle of free thinking when they're validated, and like we talked about, the most powerful thing in the world, love, they're loved and they're given credentials for this very structured, almost robotic way of thinking that falls underneath the umbrella of educational curriculum?
Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Kinyan Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Kinyan is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag, or even an overnighter. Kinyan's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to kinyan.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey.
Man, Bryce, you've got tough questions for me today. I've never had so many tough. They're tough just because they're not like, they're so layered, like they're
Mm-hmm.
multi-dimensional phenomenon of humanness, if you want.
Mm-hmm.
I would say to develop this muscle for me, it would be to, like you said, withdraw, spend some time away from the outside world, dive within, and we can talk about how this can be done. I'm thinking the first step is to allow the discovery that what you think is not true. What I mean is that you see bits and pieces of a situation, we form immediately an opinion and a judgment. Oh, this person does not like me. This person did that because of that. Whatever. I mean, we're filled with conclusions like this all day long, and none of them come from a thorough investigation or a knowledge of all the bits and pieces that pertain to that event or that situation. And it's always biased, partial, and almost all the time untrue, inaccurate. And yet we are convinced, programmed, addicted to this idea that whenever a thought comes into your mind, it's true. I'm afraid of something, therefore there's a danger. No, you're afraid because you've been programmed to be afraid, and it's part of your own. There's nothing out there that is going to hurt you. And so I'm not saying there's never. What I mean is that so much of what we do is based, like finds its root in a fear that we have, and that fear is based on preconceived conditioning from past experience, is not real. And so I'm saying the first step in this free thinking is probably observing this mind, this thought machine that is the mind, and realize that it's like it's a monkey jumping from one branch to another. This is how Hinduism or the Vedanta talks about it. It's just a series of things coming into your mind. They're not true. You just observe them without engaging with these thoughts, and immediately they fall apart because they're not true. When you develop that skill of observing your own thought, it allows you to get a form of critical thinking that is not possible before achieving that. So I would say that's the first step. Sit down with yourself, observe this whole flow of thought process. Let me start this way. Simple question. What were you thinking last Monday at 10 a.m.? You don't remember. You don't remember. The week before, the day before. So my point here is that of all the thoughts that we've had in our lives, this thing that is like so important, when a thought comes in, you don't want to let it go. Like you go to the end of it. You almost feel like if you don't go to the end of that thought, you're interrupted. You say, let me finish my thought, So we think that at the end of that thought will be like a revelation, like something we learned that would be useful in our lives. And yet you don't remember any one of these thought processes. They're so irrelevant in your life. Today, I would say, I take away everything that you've thought about. And the only thing, like, have you lost something? No, I'm the same. I'm the same person. I've not lost anything. That's how relevant this thinking process is. And yet, it steals our presence every instant of our lives. So that's what I mean. Stop, take a distance, observe this thought process, and realize that there is a direct connection with the moment, the present moment, that is so much more full of knowledge than this thought mill. That's the first step. When that skill has been developed, you've developed the first step. Critical thinking will come out of that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's so well said, man. Just that we don't need to believe every single thought that travels through our headspace or that plays ping pong in between our ears. And also, so much of what we believe to be true is downloaded based on experiences, preconceived notions, and the huge influx of our nutrition prior. And I don't just mean like what we've eaten, but what we've listened to, what we've watched, the environment we were in, what was being conditioned and kind of imprinted based on all of our different senses. And that's something that comes to mind too, is like, we're limited with our senses, but what if there's things that are taking place that maybe we can't see, feel, hear, and they don't necessarily align, like intuition, like we talk about. You develop an intuition over the course of time, and that's kind of difficult to quantify. And there's something about that unlocks this psychological curiosity for me that goes even deeper when you're looking at the realm of medicine and the power of placebo, and how you've found an herbal structure like this blue-green algae that maybe there's not a ton of research on it that's at least public to the media, but now we're seeing has regenerative qualities and is falling into the landscape of stem cells. And now it's really creating this huge positive impact on medicine, but it's not this synthetic man-made thing that comes with it being very expensive, very rare, very all these things that make it relatively out of reach to the modern day consumer because it's so easy. Very similar to saying like, hey, you want to enhance the quality of your life? Sleep 8 hours a night. People are like, why would I pay you to tell me that? It's like, that is probably one of the greatest pieces of advice that anybody could give you. But if you're unwilling to do it or incapable of doing it, like, you're missing out on so much potential as far as repair and regenesis and inflammatory management and healing of the body's natural abilities. And so with that being said, tell us a little bit about how how we can boost stem cells without pills or without therapy. Like through mindset or through environment alone, what are some of the pieces of advice that you give people as far as habits that can help them boost their stem cells in their day-to-day life?
As research moves forward, there's something that is emerging that I find so beautiful, because I do believe that and the data is there. Stem cell is the fundamental core determinant factor of human health. Yes, mitochondrial function matters. A lot of things matter. To your flora, many things absolutely matter. But fundamentally, you repair because of your repair system. These are your stem cells. You stay well because your organs are replenished with fresh cells. These are your stem cells. So it's your repair system. And it's funny, it's interesting to me to observe that whenever there's a study that is being done, let's say smoking cigarette, if you filter the smoke of cigarette, dissolves that into water or saline, and expose stem cells to it, you have shut down stem cells' ability to migrate in a tissue and proliferate.
Hmm.
So alcohol will do the same thing. Stress will do the same thing. So it's almost like the moment we start to study things that we know are bad for health, they happen to have a negative impact on stem cells. Things that we know are good for health, they have a positive impact on stem cells. So I think we're just at the beginning. I would say, generally speaking, anything that you know intuitively is good for your health, it has a good impact on stem cells. Anything that you know is bad for health, you know that it has a negative impact on stem cells. Lack of sleep, seed oil, fried food, all of these will have a bad effect on stem cells. So it's very simple. Adopt a healthy lifestyle. Now, if I go a little bit deeper, we know that fasting for more than 3 days will put more stem cells in circulation and will rejuvenate your stem cells. So you take a stem cell sample before and after a fast, and you can see that they're more active. They are rejuvenated. They're younger stem cells. So it's a very good practice. We know for centuries that fasting is good. So I would say do a 3-day fast once or twice a year. And it's going to be really good to rejuvenate stem cells, which will play a very important role in your own longevity or quality of life as you age. You're talking about the mind. I talked quite a bit about this, but I don't have data around it. The data that I have is the following. We know that neurotransmitters are essential for stem cell release from the bone marrow. Meaning, if you use compounds known to trigger the release of stem cells from the bone marrow, but you give a blocker of norepinephrine, for example, you do not get stem cell release. So there's a nervous system component in the release of stem cells. We know that stem cells have receptors for all the main neurotransmitters. We know that there are nerve terminals in all your microvasculature that are going to release neurotransmitters. So you look at the whole machine, and everything is there in our biology to say that with your mind, you could release stem cells, you could guide them to go where you want them to go, you can trigger their migration into that tissue. So you could really engineer repair just with your mind. And I say this because I remember reading an article. I was a teen in Montreal, and there was this guy who dove in a pool, and he thought it was, I don't know, 6 feet of water, 9 feet of water, and there was only like 2 feet of water. So he broke his neck, and he was fully paralyzed. And in his bed, he spent his entire conscious time to visualizing light, reconnecting his spinal cord. And about 2, 3 years later, he had recovered like a normal life, normal mobility. And he was seen as being like a miracle. Like, we don't know what happened. He's telling you what happened. He visualized repair every day of his life. He's telling you what happened. But the doctor would say, of course, this is nonsense. So we don't know what happened. And that's a little bit what I was talking about before. In medicine, there's no cure. If you cure of something, they'll tell you either the diagnosis was wrong or it's a miracle. And we need to understand, no, the body has an ability to repair. Today, we understand it's linked to your stem cells. They are your repair system. We have tools to boost that ability to repair. There's this blue-green algae, but I've identified a number of plants right now that actually they're stronger. Blue-green algae just happened to be the first one with which we discovered the phenomenon. There are more, but your own mind can achieve it. These are like the things that I... Sorry?
What are some of these other plants that you are hinting at that people can integrate into their dietary protocol?
When I discovered the effect of this blue-green algae, the resistance, if I could say, or the skepticism of the medical field was such that in order for this to be real, I had to show the mechanism of action, the active compound, the proof of concept. So we took a few years to do all of that. When all of this was done, patents were filed and all of that, then in my mind, what had been like gnawing at me for a while was like, it cannot be that there's only one plant on the planet that has an effect on the repair system. Just like many plants are having an effect on the immune system, there has to be other plants. So the way to look at them, I started to research plants that had historically used through centuries, like their folks' medicine. It had been used for problems touching various aspects of human health, with the concept that if a plant is good for many things, it's possible that the real mechanism of action is that it releases stem cells. So stem cells, when they're released, they go in the pancreas of the diabetic, the heart of the heart patient, the brain of the Parkinson patient. So historically, they would be documented to be doing many things. So I started with like medicinal mushroom, goji berry, those kinds of things. But I really discovered the strong ones when I had a chance to go into remote areas of the world, like in Madagascar. What is their go-to plant? And of all the species of aloe in Madagascar, there's one species that they have used for centuries to make a local remedy called vahona. So I went to Madagascar, saw how they were doing this local product, and understanding how they're doing, we derive our own extract, and it's so far one of the strongest ingredients. Sea buckthorn berry. At some point, I was traveling in China. I had access to biochemists that had worked with plants from the Chinese pharmacopoeia. And I asked them, you're lost on an island and you can only bring one plant. Which one would it be? It was half a joke because I wanted to see, in their opinion, what is the plant that can do so many things? And they all three told me sea buckthorn berry. So I was very surprised. I was expecting, I don't know, astragalus, some of those plants known in traditional Chinese medicine to be good for a lot of things. Anyway, they said sea buckthorn berry. So I started to dig in the scientific literature, and it's been used in Chinese medicine, Mongolian medicine, Tibetan medicine for disease of the lung, of the heart, cardiovascular system, the pancreas, and to speed up recovery from bone fracture or burn or cut to the skin. Injury to the skin. So you look at this whole spread, it's telling me it looks like we might have an effect on stem cells. So I went on the Tibetan plateau, developed a relationship with a farm, developed an extract from sea buckthorn berry. We tested it, and then we found a strong effect on stem cells. I say an extract because if the whole berry had the full effect, then the berry would already be known to be like miraculous, if you want. So that means we need to go and make it just more potent. So we can derive this extract, and we saw an amazing effect. So now I have combined together the top plants that we have studied over the years, noto ginseng, a specific fucoidan from seaweed. So these are like the main plants that we have found act as stem cell mobilizers.
And are those all the various compounds that you've used to now facilitate the creation of STEMREGEN in your various products?
That's correct. So STEMREGEN release is all these plants combining together. And now we are in the phase where we say, okay, if all of that is true, so we are releasing stem cells. Our stem cells are the repair system. Well, if we put more stem cells in circulation, many studies have shown you can reverse heart disease, problem with the lung, the brain. I mean, many studies. This is all described in my first book, Cracking the Stem Cell Code. If all of this is true, and I have a product that put more stem cells in circulation, it should have an impact on the health of people that have different kinds of organ dysfunctions. So we don't want to document that the product is good for heart disease. That's not the aim. But if we're giving back the body its natural ability to repair, we should see an impact on dysfunction of the heart. So now we have started to test it on congestive heart failure, Parkinson's, COPD, liver disease, colitis. The two studies that have been started are on heart disease and Parkinson. And we're getting so far very, very good results. The aim of it is just to say, this is just to show you that your body has its own ability to repair. All we're doing is that we're supporting the body's own ability to repair. That's really all that we're achieving.
For sure. It's a very naturopathic approach. So if somebody is experiencing, like you mentioned, congestive heart failure, COPD, some sort of Parkinson's, maybe Alzheimer's in some capacity, and they want to go down this path, how do they get there, right? Like most people follow their health insurance, go to a primary practitioner. That person usually ends up sending them to some sort of specialist. And there seemingly is this lane that they end up in based on, following where they're putting their monetization, starting with the health insurance and what's covered and the doctors and what they know up until that point. Like we talked about previously, the preconceived notions and how things have been programmed. But if somebody wants to change that a little bit and they're like, hey, there's potentially this other avenue, and I listen to this podcast and, I want to pursue, utilizing STEMREGEN, and I want to pursue fasting and some of these other protocols that we've discussed today, what would be the first step for somebody to gain awareness about that and be able to contact you or your staff? Or, how can we popularize the effects of blue-green algae and this berry that you've discussed today, where people can gain more knowledge, education, and then actually implement it into their protocols?
I mean, probably the first step is to go and see a doctor that is into functional medicine or regenerative medicine. Because we need to understand, and I don't want to paint with a brush of, let's say, I have to say it. It's because when you describe it, it really resembles mafia. But you look at the world of insurance, it's connected. They only pay and approve for treatments that are never going to cure you. And so at the end of the day, the moment you understand that, wait a minute, there are people that have cured themselves from just about anything. It's reported, it exists. Does that mean it can happen with you as well? So we need to understand, yes, the human body can repair. It is a possibility. So where do you go to do this? And it's not drugs, it's not pharma, and it's not what's paid by insurance. So if you follow that, immediately you fall outside of your mainstream doctor that is going to just look at your disease, go into the physician desk, identify what's the drug that is legally and through insurance permitted for that diagnosis, and that's what it will prescribe. You're never going to cure the problem with that approach. So first, you need to step outside of this whole approach, and that's the world of functional medicine and regenerative medicine, where they are aware of all these other modalities that oftentimes are not covered by insurance. I mean, it's so powerful what stem cells can do, ozone treatments, hyperbaric treatments, just those pulse electromagnetic frequencies. There are so many things that can be resolved just by those kinds of approaches. None of them are covered by insurance. So you just need a good guide into finding your way into what exists outside of big pharma that can really boost the body's ability to repair.
Yeah, for sure. And we talked extensively today about the power of the mind. And part of empowering the mind is proof of concept. Most people are willing to change when they experience symptoms or pain. So then as a byproduct, they, rather than getting into the line over here that's for the root cause, they get into the line over here of fix me, get rid of my symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want to discuss with you as we get close to wrapping up today is, what role do stem cells play in inflammation and autoimmune issues? And can they help modulate versus just masking the symptoms, i.e. something's hurting and I'm just going to take this pill and all of a sudden the pain goes away. So now I'm like, oh, I'm a believer in that.
Okay. It's a very good question because it really goes to the heart of the issue. Because what is inflammation? What is an area of your body where you got inflammation or got pain? It's because it's not repairing. But you have a repair system where you have a new liver every 2-3 years. So let's say you're 40 years old and you've got a condition that is there that is lingering for 5 years. You've already renewed your liver in that time frame. So that means your stem cells are working. Otherwise, you would be dead. So your stem cells are working. Why are they not repairing that area? And there are reasons for it, like poor microcirculation. But my point with all of this is that this area that is inflamed, the reason why it's inflamed, it's because it's not repairing. The moment you give your body the ability to repair, it's not going to mask the inflammation. It's not going to reduce the inflammation. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to reduce the pain. It's just going to help you repair the area that has a problem. So you're taking care of the issue at the root. Now, if you couple this with autoimmune problems, it's a little bit of a different story because you have an injury, but the injury is inflicted to you by your own immune system. So you can repair the tissue with stem cells. You will feel better, but you have not removed the constant assault by your own immune system. So in these kind of conditions, you have to dig a little bit deeper to try to find what's the cause of the issue. Why is my immune system is turning against me and developing that specific condition? So it's sort of a two-step approach. And again, functional medicine or regenerative medicine will be good to try to address the root cause of these problems. But in both cases, the secret here is just that stem cells repair. The moment you give back the body its ability to repair, you don't get rid of inflammation. You get rid of what causes the inflammation. So it's much more at the root.
Totally. As most people just kind of want to live their lives, not everybody's getting into the nuts and bolts of health and wellness. They're mandated to have some sort of health insurance, or there's a penalty on their taxes. What do you recommend monetarily, right? Like, because functional medicine, I'm a huge believer in. I love it. I appreciate it. But when it falls outside the landscape, the biggest barrier to entry becomes A, lack of knowledge, and B, lack of finances. Do you recommend people tinker with a health savings account
Mm-hmm.
or different forms of side savings that can then allow them to have some monetary tools to pursue some of these educational strategies and different biohacking techniques that we know provide cures, but maybe right now have a little bit more upfront costs and are a little
Yeah.
bit more complex than the traditional medicine route?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge in today's world, the way that insurance is structured and all of that. That's why there's a new insurance. I forgot the name, but it's Cali Means is somewhat tied to the effort of RFK. But Cali Means has developed this new insurance where they're included into their insurance a lot of different modalities that are today considered completely alternative. So that as it develops will become a response to that. But the HSA account is really the way to go. My approach with health insurance is that for me, it's just like catastrophic. If I have an accident, the way that the system is built here in America, if you don't have an insurance, I mean, you can completely be destroyed. So, which you don't have in other countries like Europe, Canada. The system is made differently. There are pros and cons, but so for me, cover yourself for catastrophic, but for disease, man, invest your funds into health, into biohacking, into finding ways of optimizing health, maintaining health, going to the root cause of the issue. None of this belongs to pharma.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Jumping back into fasting real quickly, as that's a term that's kind of thrown around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do minimal fasting, or what would they describe as intermittent fasting. Maybe they skip a meal. Typically it's breakfast because they've gone 6 to 8 hours of sleeping. Then they're not consuming until 12 or 2 in the afternoon. What strategies, you mentioned a 3-day fast being like a great way to regenerate and kind of stimulate stem cells. But what are the specifics that fall into the realm of what's categorized as fasting? Can people drink ketone IQ and get ketones in their system? Can they drink black coffee? Can they get amino acids? what strategies can be used where you're not just getting a full catabolic effect, but you are getting a healing effect, and what falls into the category of fasting? Because everybody's kind of tinkering with
Totally.
it now, and everybody's like, hey, I cut this corner and I'm still fasting, but you might not be in a state of ketosis.
Correct. Uh, it's not a difficult question, but again, it's very layered. So in in science, intermittent fasting is not called intermittent fasting. This is a popular language. It's called time restricted feeding.
Mm,
And immediately it separates from fasting because it's not fasting. Granted, it's buried into our language because your first meal in the morning is to break your fast. It's your breakfast. So somewhere in the language, fasting is tied to just an overnight absence of food. But in the medical world of fasting, we're talking about 3 days or more. It doesn't mean that nothing is gained by doing less than this, but a lot of the data is really 3 days and more. And whenever we say in those 3 days, yeah, you can get amino acids, you can do this, like these are like extrapolation, they're like hypotheses. There's not a lot of research that has been done to really say that the benefits that you get by fasting, you can do this, you can get the same thing by cutting some corners and adding calories or food and nutrients, and you can achieve the same thing if you do A, B, and C. So the research, I think, is not there. Could it be there? I don't know. Um, Intermittent fasting is great. It does bring health benefits. It has a lot of the elements, if you want, of longevity are included in terms of markers, in terms of cellular processes. You find it's triggered by intermittent fasting. But I would not say that you get with intermittent fasting the real benefit that you get with fasting. I would say a 3-day fast. It is interesting, though,
mm,
that some research is really pointing in the direction that the ketones that are produced by fasting are actually, to a large extent, the active mechanism and the mechanism of action of the benefits of fasting. So there
mhm.
is data coming out to say, yeah, if you do the ketone diet, if you take ketones, you could trigger in the body just about the same thing that fasting could do. Um, it's hard for me to swallow it to say that you could cut that corner and really achieve all the same thing. You definitely don't achieve it mentally. You definitely don't train your body to be able to be functional without food, which I think is very good. Like I've made no effort into it. I'm just born like this. I did all my exams in college fasting. So for me, when I fast, my mind is sharp. So I never experienced a sense of energy by taking food. I've never had that in my experience, in my life. I don't experience more mental energy with food. I actually experience the contrary. So for me, it's very easy not to eat. So I'm thinking when I see people so dependent sometimes, like, okay, I can't think now. I need to go and eat. I of course, my body is working completely differently. I think that if you can train your body to be independent from the need for food, I'm not saying that you don't need it, you need it, but if it does not affect your ability to draw into energy, to burn your fat, and to function properly, I think it's probably showing that your body is healthier. So I
Yeah.
would say you will get that by the absence of calorie. So in that way, for me, fasting is 3 days or more. It's a really good thing to train your body to achieve that, but you cannot overdo it. You can start to use your muscles. So there's a negative to it if you really do it too much.
Yeah. I appreciate that disclaimer there at the end, because modern American culture is, if some is good, more is better.
There you go.
And I think it's really cool too, just the understanding of just the language shift there of time restricted feeding versus intermittent fasting, and understanding that, like, yes, it's incredibly beneficial to have a shorter window to consume caloric intake. It probably very much relates to hunter gatherer culture, where we're searching for food. We're moving often at a slow pace, maybe that zone 2 pace. And then on occasion we cross paths with a lion, we need to sprint, or we need to fight, or we need to lift something heavy. And then, maybe you indulge a little bit later in the day after the kill. and you get some of those animal proteins and some of those things that fall in alignment with more of a carnivore or ketogenic diet. And I think it paints a cool picture for people. It doesn't mean it's the answer to all the problems, but I think it provides some tools for people's toolbox, and also understanding that glucose is also a tool. We shouldn't be overly reliant on it all the time, as if we can't function unless our bellies are full, because we're not eating to fill an empty space. We're eating to satisfy the nutrient density that we need to satisfy said tasks, and integrate this healing process and this regenerative process, as you've mentioned today. Does that summarize it pretty well?
Totally. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I would go like even one step further. I would say, to me, where fasting is an interesting tool, it's just, okay, let me put it this way. If there's something that you have to do because you cannot not do it, you're not free. So if you could live without food and you can manage it, somewhere it does something in your brain that increases your ability to independence overall. I really like the concept of being able to fast and being able then to just like dictate what do you choose to do in life, and not being dictated by your body.
Yeah, it's a form of golden handcuffs. Let's wrap with this. If every listener today understood just one truth about stem cells after today, what would you hope that they remember from our conversation?
Stem cells are your natural innate repair system. Just like you have an immune system, you have a repair system. It declines as we age. That decline is the cause of all the problem that you experience with aging. So if you have a means of putting more stem cells in circulation past, let's say, 30 years of age, you are going to change the quality of life of your next 50 years.
I love that, man. Where can people find your book, Cracking the Code on Stem
I
Cells?
think it's on Amazon. So cracking the stem cell code on Amazon. It's probably also on our website, stemregen.co, stemregen.co. Yeah, it's probably the best place to get it.
Very cool. And if people want to get on board and start taking some of the STEMREGEN supplements, where do you steer them? Do they go to Amazon? Do they go to your site? What's the
On our
fastest way?
site, yeah, we're not on Amazon. So
Okay.
stemregen.co.
I love it, man. Christian Drapeau, ladies and gentlemen, that was an incredible conversation. I really appreciate you allowing me to peel back the layers on the onion and get a little bit deep with you with, some of the heavier questions about big pharma and mindset and ideology, and how to really help equip our audience and our consumers of ALLSMITH, our products and our media, in order to help guide them towards their peak expression. So thanks for letting me play a little bit of ping pong with you today.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
That was super cool. Guys, if you enjoyed my conversation with Christian Drapeau, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.